Hey everyone, it's Ben here. Welcome to HR Tech Talks. I'm so glad to have you here with us and looking forward to a fun conversation today around hiring and what's happening there. Have some really interesting things to cover with Darrian, and we're going to dive into phone screens and how we connect with people during the hiring process and how we make them feel and how make that more expedient and all those kind of things. Because when I talk to leaders lately, one of the things I focus on is speed. How quickly can we get people through this process? But in the conversation, I'm going to bring up some things, not just about speed, but it's about consistency too, probably how we can do this and recreate it over and over again. So glad all of you were here with us. By the way, if you're watching this live, thank you. Welcome. Glad to have you. The data tell me, however, that most people watch this on a replay later on. So, hey, all of you on-demand watchers out there, as always, if you're watching this, whether now or later, doesn't matter to me, go ahead and chime in the chat. Just let us know, hey, Joe here from Montana or wherever else. I'm down in Huntsville, Alabama, as always, and looking forward to just hearing where everybody is. It's always fun for me to see that. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get Darrian and bring him on because I'm excited about this conversation. He and I were swapping notes and things before we came on here live, and there's some good stuff they're doing over there and can't wait to dive into it. So without any further ado, Darrian, welcome, sir. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So before we get into some of the fun stuff about what Qualifi is doing and how you're helping candidates and also helping employers, would you take a minute and tell us who you are, what you do, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So Darrian Mikell, based in Noblesville, Indiana, just outside of the Indianapolis area, CEO, co-founder of Qualifi. Outside of my work life, got a family, wife, and 3 young kids, 6 and under. And outside of that, enjoy playing basketball and staying active as much as possible. But yeah, professionally, co-founder, CEO of Qualifi. I'm happy to dive into what we do there.
Okay, well, we're definitely gonna cover that stuff in the conversation. Yeah, the basketball thing hit me because I wouldn't have felt a connection to that, but yesterday, for the first time in probably 12 years,
it's March Madness.
I played gotcha with brothers and family and everybody else with kids. My kids are old enough to play. And so we played for about 2 hours. And this morning I kind of like hobbled around, couldn't hardly move and it's like, oh yeah, this is a little strenuous. So I missed that.
I'm curious what gotcha is. And I don't know if we have time to cover that, but very
gosh. Okay. Everybody out there, hang tight for 1 second. I'm going to explain gotcha. So gotcha is 2 basketballs. You start, you're in a line. Okay. First to last.
Is it like we call that knockout? Is it the same as like knockout?
Yes,
like,
I'm sure it's the same thing as knockout.
It's a regional thing.
Yeah, that's neat.
Well, I used to call it bump growing up, and then knockout is what I've more heard it called. So
okay, well that's really funny because I was like, gotcha. As I was saying that out loud, like, wait a minute, surely everybody plays this game somewhere. I didn't know what everybody's going to call that. So awesome. Well, that's really cool. So that was my first thought there. Anyway, so back to the fun stuff. We're here to talk about what Qualifi is doing, how you're doing it, the kind of problems you're solving. And so the big focus for Qualifi, I guess I'll let you dive into it here. You, as the co-founder and CEO, you could have co-founded any company. You could have picked anything in the world. Why this? So give us a little snippet about what Qualifi does, and then tell us, I guess, why. Because I think your story, your background weaves into that really well.
Yeah, for sure. So prior to this, I was at another startup company and we were growing really fast. The CEO was a friend of mine and brought me on as employee number 1 and kind of assumed this kind of co-founder type position where I focus primarily on the internal operations of the business. So finance is part of my background as well. So I took that on, as well as just like the general ops, and then HR and recruiting also fell into my lap as well when we really started to grow the team. So we went from he and I to about 70 people on the team in a matter of 3 years. And for the first 40 or so hires, I was kind of tasked with the HR and the recruiting function. And so first glimpse into this world, like a lot of folks that are in HR or in recruiting, kind of stumbled into it. And when I did, I just partially out of necessity needed to figure out ways to be more efficient, to optimize my own workload and processes. And one of the things that I recognized was that the phone interview, even though it was probably the shortest interaction, was taking up the most time because of all the coordination, the scheduling, and then obviously the 20 to 30 minute phone calls with a multitude of candidates. And so that's when I I brought this to my brother first because he was also kind of experiencing the same pain point in his world. He was doing recruitment, among other things, similar to me in the world of home healthcare. And it really resonated between the both of us, and we had enough conviction to set out and build on the original idea, which we've kind of stayed true to. And that's, we help recruiters by giving them the tools to pre-record their own voice, to ask audio-based questions, so they can build a list of questions, create standardized interviews, and then scale by interviewing, potentially hundreds of candidates asynchronously. And the really cool part is that the interaction for the candidate takes place over the phone, primarily start to finish, but specifically the interview itself takes place over a standard phone call. So when they're ready, they hit a start button, and our system will call their phone, and they pick up and answer the questions over, like I said, a standard phone call. So cell phone, landline, really accessible and really convenient to their schedule. So yeah.
I love that. One of the things that's neat about that to me is it makes it very accessible for everyone, because even in this world right now, we assume everybody has a smartphone, and they still don't, or they don't have one that will record video, right? So they have a dumb phone, my kids call it. They have, so this allows that to be more accessible for people, which I think is awesome. And as I teased up a little bit earlier, one of the things I think that's important in this is the speed. As you mentioned earlier, the part of the phone screen that's easiest is having a talk with someone. The hardest part is how do we make sure that all these little schedule things line up so we can actually get together? So it solves some of that part, right? To make it asynchronous and let you then do it on demand almost.
Yeah. Like that, when I said like we got a lot of conviction around going after this, there could have been, I'm an ideas guy, so I definitely have a lot of ideas, related and unrelated to the world of recruitment. But for this specifically, one of the biggest things that we found early on, statistically, the phone interview is the longest step in the hiring process when it's a part of the process. And that is partially one, if you think about just the general flow, it's usually sits at the top of the funnel. So it's where you're dealing with, potentially the most candidates that you're going to for that given role. And then, yes, you have the, either manual or automated reaching out, having to coordinate your schedule. And if you're not doing that, then you're just trying to play phone tag, and you know how much that tends to work. And so we remove all the scheduling, we remove all the phone tag, just sending a simple invite and letting the candidate respond at their own convenience, which tends to be faster than a recruiter could get to them anyway. And so we see that typical time going from what we hear is a week to 2 weeks on average for a lot of our recruiters that we work with, down to usually it's same day responses from the candidate. So that convenience lets them respond day one, and they usually do.
I think that's actually the title. Something like that spurred the title for the episode today, which was, the fastest phone interview ever or something like that. Because I think for a lot of us, maybe I would get lucky when I was doing phone screens. Maybe I'd get lucky and actually get someone that first day. But usually there's a lot of leaving messages, call me back, and then please let them call me back when I can actually answer the phone. You're hoping because there's so many variables there. Talk about how, so this is, you're solving this fundamental problem. And one of the things that you said there that I had not stopped to think about is when we get to this point where we're bringing people in physically to interview with us, or we're going to do some sort of live interview, even if it's virtual, doing that live interview with people, we've already vetted them to some degree that we think, okay, they're probably in our top bunch, that we're going to pick one of these handful of people. We're not doing live interviews with 50 people at a time. Right. But we may do phone screens with twice as many as we're actually going to have there. So by solving that, or giving them a chance to talk about more what they're doing, it lets us hopefully get a better picture more quickly if they're going to be able to move farther down the funnel. I just haven't stopped to think about that in the past. So you said it a minute ago, but I think that's a really interesting point to probably draw out of this too, is it gives us a chance to consider more people.
Right. Like it's partially in the name, like what you're doing as a recruiter is qualifying your applicants. And the way that we talk about that is we want you to spend the most time with the candidates that are most likely the ones that you're going to offer the position. And so to go from, like you said, the 20 to 30 candidates down to the 5 to 10 that you're actually going to spend a more catered time with, those hour-long or more panel interviews, or things that you might do beyond that screening step. It's just really difficult to do that with, tens of candidates at a time. And it's wasteful. I mean, that was the other thing too. When you think about the nature of screening and interviewing, by definition, you're not going to hire every single one of those candidates. I know that you pick up and learn things from candidate to candidate, but generally it is a wasteful activity because, again, most of those candidates are not going to get hired. And so that is time spent that you could have been spending with, the ones that were the right fit and made the most sense for that role. So that's what our goal is, to get you to those candidates a lot faster so you can spend more time with them.
I keep wanting to comment instead of ask questions. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you, but you keep saying stuff that's interesting to me. One of the things that you'll appreciate this, one of the things we found in our research last year on talent acquisition was those companies that have been using tools like this for automation purposes within their hiring funnel somewhere, the longer they've been using it, their behavior starts to change a little bit, because usually it's just, I've got a pain point, a problem. We can't phone screen, do it. But the longer they start using these things, then they start changing and focusing their attention on other things. And one of those, to your point there, is when companies start using these things, it's not about keeping candidates at arm's length and saying we don't want to interact with them. We want to interact with the right ones. And so they're doing this so that they can spend time building deeper relationships with the candidates who are going to be their top 2 or 3, whether for this job or for the next job. Right. They're silver medalists, and trying to build your relationships there. So it's not about just holding them at bay and saying, okay, well, here's an offer that we're offering blindly without talking to you. No, we're going to make sure and get to know the right ones so we can really pour deeply into those relationships when it's time to bring that person on, instead of having this very transactional kind of feel to it. So that was one thing I was going to give you some encouragement on, is the data actually back up when it comes to doing that. They're actually leaning in on those relationship pieces.
Yeah. Some of the favorite things that I've heard from recruitment managers or directors of talent acquisition is around how they view their team and what they want their team to be. Like current state, a lot of recruiters are, I've heard it referred to as like resume shops or resume review shops. They're more in like the admin focus area where they're just trying to process things. And these directors, one, just from a career standpoint, and also just from just thinking about the talent that you have on your team, they're wanting them to be more and more strategic, but they're bogged down by a lot of just the administrative responsibilities of being a recruiter. And so the more that you can automate some of those processes and do so without sacrificing your candidate experience, the more that those recruiters can become more strategic, start executing on some of the initiatives or strategic things that they have in mind, but just can't get to because of just the everyday demands that they're facing.
And there's not a single one of us, including when you were doing this hands-on, by the way, there's not a single one of us that gets from the morning, I can't wait to look at 50 resumes or phone screen 25 people today, or like those things those are not the exciting parts. That's the more robotic parts of the job anyway, that pull us away from those parts that really get us excited and let us have fun. When we're talking about, this is what our values are, and we get a chance to really connect with someone on those things and other stuff. So you mentioned comments you hear back when people are actually using the product. And that's one of the questions I was going to ask you, is when you look across the different clients you have, are there any interesting trends or similarities or commonalities there across what they're doing, or any data points you can pull in and say, hey, this is how long these things are taking on average, or this is how many go through there and how much time they're saving broadly? I'm just kind of curious if you have anything like that you could throw out here, because I'm enjoying like the micro conversation, but I know this also rolls up to a higher level at the company level where they're getting some time savings and some benefit from that too.
Yeah. So obviously kind of we lead with the speed and the efficiency side. So that's kind of this has been our calling card. So the big stat that I always, like to throw out is that the majority of replies come back on the same day that the candidates receive the invite. And so that's just a huge benefit there. Anecdotally, we like I mentioned, there's companies that they say that they're just a phone screen step alone tends to take a week, or sometimes 2 weeks just to complete that process before they move on to the next one. And often there's so many things that could happen with a candidate. They take another job, schedules don't align, or like all those sorts of things that throw that process off. So we're helping to solve for that. Another unique one from a client was, and we want to dig in more to this and see if there's more trends around this, but no-show rate from after the screen to the next step in their hiring process dropped significantly. So we had a client that told us that they were seeing a roughly 50% no-show rate from their previous phone interview method to their next step in their hiring process, and that dropped from 50% to 7% after introducing Qualify. So getting those more engaged candidates that are really wanting to move and be able to obviously qualify the ones that want to work there and are fit to work there. So I think that's what that speaks to.
You know what? There's a really interesting aspect to that actually cuts both ways. Part of it is, let's keep this process speed. You lead with speed. I think I wrote that down. That was your little tagline, which I think is fun. I think that's important. One of the things that I threw out there to you before we started recording today was that 1 out of 3 candidates in our new data that just came in last week said that they've ghosted a company because the hiring process was too long or overly complicated. So you're taking that problem out of this by speeding that up and making it more simple. But the other part of this, I think that's important to touch on, is the people that see these conversations and hear the kind of questions they're asking and saying, hey, this is really important in this job. So tell me about a time you did this. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize that was part of this job.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't the job for me.
Right.
And there are probably people in that process that realize the questions they're asking actually are not something that I really want to focus my time and attention on. Let's drop out now before we have to go further. So there may be some of those things too that are coming in where people are realizing this is either a really great fit or not such a great fit for me. And they self-select out before you get down the process, depending on them, starting to think about them in that role, and then them backing out or stopping after they've been there for a week and all those other kind of fun variables pop up.
And we've definitely heard recruiters utilizing it that way, especially in the world where it's so easy to apply to roles. It's very easy to
click.
Companies, click apply. And so as a recruiting team, sometimes you are just in a place where you need to hire anybody that can meet the most minimum qualifications, but a lot of recruiters are really looking for, I know for us and our team, like we utilize Qualify ourselves. And one of the things we look for is like, especially on the kind of, why did you apply to this role? That's a very simple question, but we're looking for people that were excited about our mission, like what we're doing as a company, and seeing themselves in, doing what we're doing, as opposed to, people that were just generally looking for a position with this title and, that sort of thing. So you can get more mission driven. It helps you to qualify people on the basis of like if they're aligned with your mission or aligned with the role specifically or the company and what we're doing and how that excites them. So definitely that.
Is that a question that you ask every time someone's looking for a job with you? Is why do you want this job? Why do you want to work with us? Or what was I didn't write that down exactly, but I wanted to make sure I had that.
Yeah, I forget the exact phrasing of it, but essentially it gets at like what made you interested to apply to this role. It's in essence what that question is. And it's not just I saw it on the job board and thought it seemed cool, and it's we want to try to find people that are going to be excited about what we do. And that's partially why we introduce our product in our own process, because we want them to know what we do, be excited about what we do, and they get to experience that in a couple of different ways by doing that.
What insights do employers get besides just, okay, this is faster? What insights do they get on their end? Do they see, what people said? Do they see the transcript of the call? Like what kind of stuff do they get on their end? What's the recruiter experience look like?
Yeah. So from the recruiter standpoint, obviously they're able to build out their interview and then send the invites really easily, or automate that through integrations with their platforms. And then once the candidate takes the interview, it comes back to them in a structured way. So just as it was structured going out, it comes back to where they can see the question and then click play per each response, or hit play all and it'll play through each response. So they don't have to listen to themselves talk anymore. So it kind of cuts out half the conversation. They get the audio and the transcriptions. They can insert keywords that they want for us to quote unquote listen for, and we'll flag those in a couple of different places in the UI. And then as far as that kind of next level things, we're really excited about the next phase of Qualify and being able to help surface more insights. There's a variety of ways that can be done. I know, AI, machine learning, that whole world has been introduced to recruitment already. We want to be really practical and thoughtful about that approach, because there's also a lot of negative things that can come with it. But we're really excited about being able to surface insights, surface data, help people to mitigate bias in different ways, as well as ask better questions that will produce better outcomes in the first place. So those are some of the things that are kind of like next phase of what Qualifi is getting into.
I'll have to swap some notes with you after we're done here, by the way, because that was one of the things we asked about in the research was if you had some tools to help with those, what would you use it for? And some of the things you talked about there, I think are important. Like, is the question we're asking here leading to the outcome we're looking for? Because many times we don't do that at a global level for a recruiting function. It's just, hey, Darrian always seems to hire good people, and Ben really he's picked some stinkers. But we don't stop to say, what questions are they asking? Are they right questions? Are they predictive of someone's ability to do the job? I was going to give a hat tip really quick. Norma in the comments just said that she always asks why someone applied for the job too. So you're in good standing there. Norma's one of our favorite audience members out there, so she listens in regularly. Okay, one of the other things I want to ask you about is any lessons learned. You see these companies using it, and it may be something that you've already said, just double down on it. Like, this is the thing that works, and make sure you do this. I know we talked about, asking certain types of questions, or, hey, it needs to be 4 questions or less. If you go to 7 questions, people don't complete it. Any recommendations from people out there that are doing this or looking for tips on how to make their own phone screens better? What recommendations do you have?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, and obviously take this with all the grains of salt in the world, because it's, the messenger delivering this message. So I'm obviously biased, but don't be afraid of automation. Do your research before diving into it. But I think what we found is that recruiters can sometimes, especially if they're really passionate about what they do and caring for the candidate experience and those interactions, they can be a little leery of these sorts of tools. But what we argue and what we found is actually quite the opposite. Candidates are looking for more seamless experiences. They often are more favorable to experiences that have more convenience involved in that, and that convenience often takes a little bit of automation. If you just think about the world of e-commerce and being able to click and buy anything and it show up on your door within a matter of days, let alone potentially hours. That experience is not what you get in a typical recruitment process. So if you're thinking about a candidate experience, think about it not just on what each interaction looks like, but what the total interaction looks like from start to finish, and how you can make that a lot more pleasant. And then from our data, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that so a surprising number of people have voted this, a positive experience to the platform. So generally 90+% of the candidates that have come through have voted, or not voted, but rated their experience a positive one. And so that was a delightful surprise, because when we started out, it was, hey, we're building this to save recruiters time. Hopefully candidates like it. And now we found that they do, and it's convenient. They don't have to do the phone tag or schedule with the recruiter. They feel a little bit less pressure because they can take it when they're ready at any time of the day, those sorts of things. So it's been really, really fun in that regard.
One thing that may contribute to that too is, everybody's probably getting tired of me hearing me say in the research, but in the research that just came back, one of the things I was particularly intrigued by is 1 out of every 2 candidates say they prefer these automated screens, automated, processes, convenience processes, what you use, I love that term. They prefer those things because when compared to a resume is just a static thing that doesn't change and evolve depending on the situation or scenario. But in the conversation, you ask a question a certain way, and I may respond very differently based on what you ask compared to what it looks like on the actual resume. Yeah. So the candidate said, these kind of experiences give me a better chance to really show what I'm capable of compared to that. So there's some good things probably lurking in there too.
And to that point, you can, through automation, you can, there's probably different ways to word this, but get more shots on goal, or find some of those diamonds in the rough that you would have probably just screened out because of the paper resume alone, or because of the paper application. and not them either not being able to showcase themselves well on paper, and you just, because of your bandwidth, you just didn't have time to get to those. I think about it in a lot of systems have like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a sideways thumb. You probably don't get a chance to get to a lot of those sideways thumbs as often because you're so, your schedule is so tight, and so now this like helps open up the potential, and you're like, oh, like this person I would have missed out on, but now they're able to make it through to the next steps. So give some more folks opportunities and find some great people.
I had a chance to interview one of the talent acquisition leaders at the FBI of all places a few months ago. And one of the things he said in relation to that, he said, we always want to find the perfectly safe hire who has all the things and, it's within our budget range. That's the perfect hire. He said, they don't exist today. For most companies, they're breaking the budget, or they're having to change the requirements because it's not the same. And he said, we should take more risks to hire someone amazing, as you're pointing out, the middle thumbs. Right, we should take some of those risks because those people have the potential to be incredible. They may not fit the exact profile demographically of our perfect employee, and they may be. And I've got fun stories of hiring those people myself, making those decisions and saying, well, I really hope this works out. Right? The perfect candidate doesn't exist. I haven't found them unless you found them. And if you do, I need you to tell me where they are. I have not found them yet. So, goodness, this has been so much fun. So, if someone out there wants to hear more about what Qualifi's up to, wants to connect or follow the company, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, really easy. We're at Qualifi.hr. You can see the spelling right there over my shoulder or right there in the tag. But it's spelled with an I instead of a Y. So QUALIFI.HR. Really easy to find us. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I think my name should pop up pretty quickly. So I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing some stories and some encouragement here. I loved, as I told you, your story of, hey, I suddenly was plunged into the deep end of doing this recruiting stuff and realized just how hard it was. And so I want to solve this for other people. And so I think that story really connects with a lot of people out there listening in. And I appreciate you for taking some time of your schedule to spend with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed this. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. To everybody else out there, I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. I hope you got some great notes and ideas and suggestions out of this, by the way. Of all the parts of the hiring process, phone screens is one of those that haven't really changed very much over time. And so I'm excited to think about doing this a little differently and also giving it a fresh look as well. Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking questions that are predictive or indicative of a good hire or not? And are you considering those people who may be outside your normal pool, but especially today could be your next great hire? So thank you all for joining us on HR Tech Talks. I'm Ben Eubanks. I will catch you again next time. Have a great week.